Marine Reacts to the Black Templars, Part 1, by Baldermort's Guide to Warhammer. As always, I'm going to be leaving a link to the original video channel down in the description below, so go to make sure that you check them out. So I'm really excited to start listening more to Baldermort's version of telling the lore, just mainly, big part because of his voice, and just the way his little setup is. Like, he kind of provides you a little bit of a story in the beginning, in the first half, at least from what I saw, and then in the second part, he actually gets into the actual lore. And it kind I kind of felt like it helped me try to understand it better when I was watching the Salamanders video from him. So since this is a part 1 and part 2 type scenario, because I don't want to make the video insanely long, I'm assuming that this whole first half, so like around 20 minutes, is going to be mainly a story focus. So that way the next time when I see it, I'm going to get more into the lore. That's how I'm assuming that this is going to go. And people have also mentioned it in the comments, but I've been getting more interested in the Black Templar specifically, just because of Hell's Reach. By Richard Boylan. Also, real quick, if at any point during the video it feels like things are trimmed out at weird places or there's just some parts that are muted, just know that I had to most likely do that due to copyright claims, mainly because of the music. But hopefully that doesn't happen, but if it does, that's the case. And let's just go ahead and get right into it. But before we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, really does help me out a lot. Hit the notification bell right there so we get notified every time I do upload. Sometimes I upload twice a day. Now working on them in the evenings and then releasing them early the next day. That way when you all wake up, you have a fresh new video first thing in the morning. So without further ado, let's go ahead and see what the Black Templars have in store for us.
So, you wish to know of us. You wish to know what drives us. What makes us who we are. What makes us different to our brother Astartes. I can tell you this very simply. It is in our faith. It is in our vows. There are 4, and they are thus. Suffer not the unclean to live. Uphold the honor of the Emperor. Abhor the witch. Destroy the witch. Accept any challenge, no matter the odds. So we all have sworn, so we all do. For none have ever broken these oaths in 10,000 years of our eternal crusade, and none ever will. For we are the right hand of the God Emperor. We are his purest sons. We are his punishment. We are his vengeance. For we are the Black Templars.
Real quick, now a little part right there. He mentioned 3 things that really stuck out. Now, as far as saying that, I got the real feeling that obviously these seem to be the most devoted, or at least the most fanatical, in a sense, I guess. Essentially, try hard. Definitely not insulted them, but like they really, let's just say they take their job very seriously. And as far as when he said that no one has broken that oath, does that also mean that nobody has ever been corrupted by, like, say, chaos or anything in general? Or has it been an instance where one of them has been corrupted? Or maybe one of them has broken it, but obviously they probably would have mentioned that. And, obviously if one did, they would. And as far as being, or them considering themselves the purest, does anyone else think if there's any other Astartes chapter that you think is more, or do you think that these guys specifically are the purest? Just because in my mind, I'm thinking right now, in my opinion, I feel like it would either be at this point a tie between the Grey Knights and the Black Templars. But then again, I don't know who, because from the Grey Knights, I heard that the one Grey Knight that was supposed to have been captured or corrupted by Slaanesh isn't even technically considered a Grey Knight, or like they're not sure that's actually a Grey Knight. And they said in the Black Templars right here that none of them has ever broken the oath. which I would assume to believe that that means that also none of them have ever been corrupted. So I feel like it would probably be at this point between them two.
Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, and I wish to introduce you to the factions and forces of the Warhammer 40k universe. I pray you will forgive me for the vigor of this video, but it is now impossible to brook this subject without a modicum of reflected zeal. Do also please bear in mind that this is an introduction only. I will release more entries on this chapter as I am able. At this point I would like to mention that I have done some entries on Rogul Dawn, the Primarch of the Imperial Fists, from which the Black Templars are descended. If you have not seen it and do not know of the life of Rogul Dawn, it may be a good time to put this video on pause and check that out whilst painting or pottering. It would lend more context to that which we discussed today. Now, with the extensive throat clearing performed, let us get into the heart of the matter. Today, let us explore the history, legacy, and character of one of the most dangerous and fanatical of the forces at the Emperor's command. Let us explore the Black Templars. What is your life? My honor is my life. What is your fate? My duty is my fate. What is your fear? My fear is to fail. What is your reward? My salvation is my reward. What is your craft? My craft is death. What is your pledge? My pledge is eternal service. What is your duty? To serve the Emperor's will. What is the Emperor's will? That we fight and die. What is death? It is our duty. Of all of the chapters of the Adeptus Astartes.
Before you guys, holy shit, man! It gives you chills. I don't know what it is with the wording, just something about it and the way he really, I guess, captures you. And it's also kind of part of his voice that really gets me like sucked into this. Also, I'd be very curious to kind of see what the recruitment process is. I feel like this would be one of the more tougher ones from the other Space Marine chapters. Damn, even just their color scheme is insanely cool looking.
The Space Marines. This is perhaps one of the only two successor chapters that have managed to outshine and become more popular with the fanbase than their originating legion. But it is not difficult to see why. For in all the galaxy there are few forces, Xenos, Imperial or Chaos, that can liquidize the bowels of their enemy, so much as even the whispered mention of this glorious chapter. The Black Templars are the Emperor's wrath made manifest, but they do not rely on a curse of Khorne to do so, as the Blood Angels do. They do not rely on the forces of witchcraft and warp manipulation, as the Grey Knights are verily designed to do. Nor do they have a genetic predisposition to berserk rages or canine attributes, as the Space Wolves do. They rely on will, faith, and courage alone. The Black Templars are fanatics of a level that would impress, if not intimidate, even the Adeptus Sororitas. They are the clenched fist of the Emperor. They are the wide cold anger of their father, Rogul Dawn. They are the thing that Chaos worshippers fear. They are the burning brand, the righteous chainsaw, the blessed bolter. They are the men who purge all that is unclean. Woe to the mutant, the heretic, and most especially the traitor, should they be in the path of the eternal crusade of the Black Templars.
Oh my god, dude. Well, first of all, he really knows how to hype them up. And the wrath part of the Emperor, that reminded me of Hell's Reach when he said that he was Wrath incarnate. So these guys, okay, now this is me being a little biased, and say for example, in the military branches, right, the Marines are considered supposed to be the poor branch, right? And it's one of those instances where the whole thing about we do more with less, which kind of reminded me of this because they technically have less in terms of certain capabilities that some of the other Space Marine chapters can do, like the psyker abilities. And then again, I think they called it witchcraft though, but they're going based off of pure sheer will and just kind of themselves. And I mean, honestly, for me, it might be being biased again, but it just reminded me like the way the Marine Corps is. I mean, you'd be crazy at the amount of shit that certain Marines can do given situations and what they have at their disposal in order to complete whatever it is they're trying to complete.
Templars have never known lasting defeat. They have never bowed to pressure, and they have never simply obeyed orders and knelt before Gulliman and his cursed treatise, the Codex Astartes. During the darkest of times, they have been the fire that has given light to the righteous and burnt the foes of the Holy Emperor and his Imperium.
Damn. Again, I'm sorry for pausing so much, but when they said about Gulliman, who was the one for the primer from the Ultramarines, who ended up taking this, I guess, like the acting leader of man, but obviously the Emperor is still like the supreme leader, like the actual leader. And Gilliman, from what I was told or remember at least, he was the one that was making the codexes to kind of give like, I guess, like guidelines of how to act and how to be. And then the Black Templars said, we don't, essentially from what he said right now, we don't give a fuck. We're still like gonna do what the real, I guess, like the real leader, which is still technically the Emperor. And damn, man, holy shit.
Their copious annals of glory, they have almost single-handedly saved the Imperium from tyranny. They have never rested and never repented the oaths their ancestors of the Blade swore 10,000 years ago. The Black Templars are vengeance manifest. They are purity. They are faith, and they are relentless. Now, gentle listener, let us explore why they are so different to their cousins and brothers of the other chapters of the Adeptus Astartes. For this, we must go back over 10,000 years. We must go back to the very beginning of the chapter, and the darkest period in human history. We must revisit the horror of the Horus Heresy. Only by doing this can we begin to understand the depths of the drives that have propelled the chapter through the many millennia that have come after. We must go back to the very siege of terror, the scouring and the iron cage. We must steep ourselves in this history so we can understand the righteous rage that is within the souls of the Space Marines who wear the black and white of the Templars. So, let us begin. The Emperor of Mankind arose in a period that was hell. Humanity was almost removed from the galaxy, and its annihilation seemed inevitable. The man who has only ever been called the Emperor or the Master of Mankind then arose to guide, lead, and save our entire race. He fought.
That's another thing that's been in my mind. I don't know if I've said it before. Does the Emperor of Man actually have a name? Or name that he goes by? I don't think I've ever heard that at all, or mentioned, or if he even has a name. And he just said that he's only ever been mentioned by the term Emperor.
An army of super soldiers, genetically engineered human males of huge sizes, most being over 8 feet tall. All had multiple organs that were added to them over time, making them into true post-humans and the most lethal biological human force the galaxy had ever seen. These soldiers were called the Adeptus Astartes, the Emperor's Space Marines. Originally, there were 20 legions, each taken from the genetic template of a being more akin to a demigod than a man, beings called Primarchs. They were to be the generals of the Emperor's armies, a job they were not only forged to perform, but did so with aplomb. Each a titan on the battlefield, in the command tent, and in personal combat, with abilities as far beyond their genetic sons as the Marines were above standard humanity. With these crusading armies, led by their godlike fathers, the forces of humanity could not be stopped. They went out into the galaxy and conquered, liberated, and pacified the vast majority of the Milky Way. When final victory seemed in sight, the Emperor of Mankind left his most able son, Horus Lupercal, in charge of the end of the endeavor. The Master of Mankind returned to Terra, what we now call Earth, and took up his most secret project. A trial so secret that he did not even inform his sons of his intentions or his labors, their goals or expected results. It was a mistake that would change the course of human history forever. When the Emperor had left the Great Crusade, his sons, the Primarchs, fell to petty bickering, and the son he left in charge of his brothers, Horus Lupercal, fell to evil. He was seduced by the dark powers of chaos, who are the enemy of the Emperor until his dying breath. And using the powers of chaos and his own knowledge of his brothers, their enmities and grudges, Horus in turn persuaded a full half of his brothers and their armies to declare for him also. The Horus heresy had begun.
Okay, now, okay, so I am in the middle of still listening to the book. It's been a slow process just because school has started up again and, life in general. But I've always been curious, and I'm pretty sure, at least if they don't mention it in the books, someone in the comments will tell me that Horus used to be a really good guy, very loved, and he ended up getting corrupted. So, and it had to deal also with the whole secrecy and that they weren't told what the Emperor was doing, from what I've been told in the comments. Now, I don't know how 100% true that is, but I mean, I could see that definitely being the case. But as far as his brothers and getting them to turn away, were they also corrupted by chaos, or did he legit manage to convince them, like in a logical way? And because I'm assuming if he's consumed by or corrupted by chaos, that in his mind he's thinking what he's doing is right. And just kind of curious to see if his brothers that he did turn had that same type of scenario happen to them.
As the leader of the Crusade, he managed to send all of the Primarchs he knew would be loyal to their father to the furthest reaches of the galaxy. He spread them thin, or led them into traps, so that they could be removed from the picture. When enough had been done, Horus Lupercal finally turned his cloth and declared himself in open rebellion, and attacked all of the facilities, colonies, and forces that would not forswear their loyalty to the Emperor and bend their knee to him. Rogel Dorn, the Primarch of the Imperial Fists, was one of the few that were near Terra and would not surrender. Rogel fought a war against his brothers Horus and all of their armies for the better part of a decade, but eventually, inexorably, they fought their way to the birthplace of humanity, the throne world of the Emperor, Terra. Rogel and two of his loyal brother Primarchs, Jagatai and Sanguinius, were all that were able to be present to defend the Holy Palace on Terra against twice, if not thrice, their numbering Primarchs and their legions of Astartes. Also, their adversaries had the corrupting powers of chaos on their side, and thus were able to summon hordes of demons from the darkest corners of the warp. Malign entities that were of vast power. Yet Rogel and his brothers held their line and slowed the armies of Horus. They never gave up and never surrendered. They fought for every inch of ground, every system, every light year of space. The cost of the war was catastrophic.
Now with the Imperial Fist, right? I've heard in the Hell's Reach also, again referring back to the comments, that that the reason why Grimaldus was kind of pissed off that he had to go defend Hell's Reach instead of being the Old Road battle was that they're the ones that typically take the fight to the enemy, and they're not the ones to really set in a defense type position. Now, that's the case, and also because Rogel or the Black Templars are the descendants of from Rogel who's the Primarch of the Imperial Fist. Imperial Fist, so like I forgot if the Imperial Fist were almost exactly like the Black Templars in terms of they both had the same Primarch, but in any case, the Imperial Fist are supposed to be way more to be on the defensive side of things. Like, they're very good at defending areas. And obviously, in this case, Terra.
You may ask what this has all got to do with the Black Templars. Well, let me explain, gentle listener. For Rogel Dawn was the father of the Imperial Fists. They were taken from his genetic makeup and were of a similar temperament, mind, and steel as he. And it is from these Astartes, these Space Marines, that the Black Templars were taken. Now we must go into one particular nuance, another titan, another legend of the age of which we speak. It is the man, the Marine, called Sigismund. In a time of legends, where the Emperor and the Primarchs bestrode the galaxy like deities, where the ranks and numbers of the Space Marines were at their very zenith, and their deeds were worthy of epic poem and bardic song, there was one who outshone all of his brothers and cousins. Sigismund. It is often said that with the exception of the Primarchs and the Emperor himself, there has never been a more lethal and skilled human to grace the entire human race. During the Great Crusade, his name was hailed as the mightiest and a peerless jewel that adorned his legion. This was to be proven beyond any shadow of doubt when the heresy reached its crux moment during the Siege of Terra. Sigismund fought during the entire heresy for his legion, the 7th, the Imperial Fists. He was the first captain of the legion and its greatest light. When Rogel Dawn, Sanguinius and the Emperor left the palace by teleportarum to take the fight to Horus on the very bridge of his flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, Sigismund was one of those left behind. He was left behind to lead. He did so from the front. Sigismund was granted the best armor and weaponry that could be gained, and then tasked to act as the Emperor's own champion. He was to represent the Emperor in the defense of the palace. As the champion, he was to locate and confront the leaders and heroes of the sieging army of his brother Astartes, the traitors. In this function, he challenged over a score of Chaos champions, demons, and twisted marine officers. He dispatched them all in short order, nor did he do so with bolter or plasma gun trickery or traps. Every single last one of them was challenged, confronted, and defeated in personal combat. Blade to blade, steel to steel. He brought all low with his courage, faith, and skill alone. His ability was only ever outshone by his conviction and faith. With these attributes combined in this role, he was unstoppable. When Horus had been slain by the Emperor, which is a tragic tale I will explain on another day, the forces of Chaos broke and fled. What followed was a war that saw all loyalist forces of the Imperium chase the traitors across the galaxy, inflicting defeat upon them. The traitors were hounded remorselessly into a tear in Rio space that led to the realms of the Warp, called the Eye of Terror. This campaign was called the Scouring, and Sigismund was one of the loyalist warriors that was inflamed with zeal, ever in the vanguard of every battle fought by his legion. But it was never enough. Rogel Dawn and all of his sons, the Imperial Fists, would never forgive themselves for what they construed as their failing in allowing the Emperor to be crippled that day on the bridge of the Vengeful Spirit. Thus, their own self-loathing was enshrined within their breasts, and led to a cold rage that could never be satisfied, never be slacked or sated.
Dude, the amount... I mean, just the way that he's picturing them right now, the insane amount of devotion. Like, it's literally scary at times, especially if you met someone like this in real life that was so devoted to someone or something, and just to see how far they would be willing to go to complete whatever they're trying to complete. Like when he said that they were that silent, cold rage, that they were pissed off and felt somewhat responsible for the Emperor being injured. So essentially, this is just really reinforcing that the Templars don't fuck around. And this is definitely one of the few Space Marines. Obviously, you wouldn't want to meet any of them if you were on the opposing side, but these ones in particular, you would not want to run into.
When this was done, civil war loomed again. When Reboot Guilliman supplanted Rogel, as the head of the Loyalist armies and dictated that the legions should be broken into lesser units of only 1,000 Astartes, called chapters. Rogel and his son, Sigismund, would not countenance this horror, this infamy. Rogel declared Guilliman a coward, but when naval forces began to engage Imperial Fist vessels because of their rebellion against the dictator Reboot Guilliman, civil war loomed again. Alas, Rogel had to decide between compliance or another civil war, a civil war that the human race might not survive. Rogel Dorn knew his sons would never willingly comply, so purposefully he led them into a massacre arranged by their worst enemies, the Iron Warriors' traitor legion. The trap was called the Iron Cage, a perfect maze of fortifications arranged for the one purpose only, the destruction of the Imperial Fists. The butchery was great, and only few Marines survived.
Wait a minute, what the... Did he... Hold on. I swear to God I heard that wrong. I must have heard that wrong. I'm going to rewind it.
Rogel and his son, Sigismund, would not countenance this horror, this infamy. Rogel declared Guilliman a coward, but when naval forces began to engage Imperial Fist vessels because of their rebellion against the dictator Reboot Guilliman, civil war loomed again. Alas, Rogel had to decide between compliance or another civil war, a civil war that the human race might not survive. Rogel Dorn knew his sons would never willingly comply, so purposefully he led them into a massacre arranged by their worst enemies, the Iron Warriors' traitor legion. The trap was called the Iron Cage, a perfect...
Alright, so, with Rogel... Well, so he didn't like, and the Imperial Fist were not going to like the way Guilliman wanted to make them into smaller chapters of 1,000 each, assuming that that's probably why, because he probably didn't want a distorted amount of power in any other chapter, just because I feel like that's also probably what happened with the Horus Heresy, or is probably what caused this issue, because when one gets too big, and if they were to get corrupted, crazy things like the Horus Heresy could probably also happen, or not maybe that being the main reason, but like a possibility or something that would add to it. Now, obviously, Rogel didn't want a civil war again, so he sent his own guys into a trap. Now, I've always heard that the Lamentors are supposed to have a really, really sad backstory, but the Imperial Fists always kind of remind me of them, because I believe they're both yellow colored, right? Except the Imperial Fists have an actual fist on the side. Now, the way he says it, when he says it was a massacre, man, like, I understand what his intent is, as far as like not wanting to create another civil war, but it's like he's sending his own guys to go die in a trap. I think he called it the birdcage. Damn.
Maze of fortifications arranged for the one purpose only, the destruction of the Imperial Fists. The butchery was great, and only few Marines survived. Rogel sacrificed his very sons to the altar of Reboot Guilliman's Codex Astartes, his writ, his new order. With only enough Marines left to form very few chapters, so...
Wait, and then on top of that, do people know that he did this? Or was this something that he just did and didn't tell anybody? Because, oh my god, dude, I can't even get over that. Then again, I mean, sacrificing technically, which would be a few in terms of the whole human race. I don't know. I mean, let me know down in the comments below what you think about that idea. Do you think it was a good move? Do you think it was a bad move? Do you think it was a necessity, depending on the situation? And honestly, right now, man, it's kind of hard to wrap my head around that, the fact that he did that to his own guys.
Great had been the toll taken by the Iron Cage. There were not enough Marines left for any form of rebellion. Thus, Rogel achieved his goal, the aversion of a second civil war, for his men were broken. All but one. Sigismund. The remnants of the Imperial Fist's Legion were broken into chapters of 1,000 men, but only few. 1. The Imperial Fists were made up of Rogel Dawn's veterans. The Crimson Fists were made up of the youngest and most hopeful sons. There were others, but records differ, for it has been over 10,000 years since this event, and they will gain their own entries in the future. The last chapter to be formed was to be made up out of the most zealous, the most fanatical, the most aggressive of all of the sons of Rogel. There could never be any doubt who would lead this chapter. It was Sigismund. My tabard, the white of sun-bleached bone, offers a stark contrast to the blacker-than-black plate beneath. The heraldic cross stands proud on my chest, where Astartes of lesser chapters wear the Emperor's Aquila. We do not wear his symbol. We are his symbol. Reclusiac Grimaldus of the Hell's Reach Crusade.
That's my boy.
Sigismund showed lip service to the Codex Astartes for a period, but was driven by a fire that few could even conceive, let alone match, and his plans and pathways soon permitted him more leeway. For Sigismund forged his chapter now, he alone. He was unfettered by convention and precedent, and no longer had his melancholy and stern father to gainsay him in any decision. Thus Sigismund forged a weapon that reflected his own character, his own drive. Thus was the fire of zeal lit, a fire that has never dimmed in all the long millennia of the Imperium. Thus were the Black Templars formed. When they were forged, Sigismund reinstated his vows as champion of the Emperor, and then expanded on them. Thus were the 4 great vows of the Black Templars taken by the entire chapter, and have been retaken by every leader, officer, or initiate of the Templars ever since. Abhor the witch. Smite now the scions of the witch. Grant us the strength to pierce their unclean flesh, to cover their fields with the pale forms of their blasphemous dead, to drown the thunder of guns with the shrieks of their dying, to lay waste to their citadels with hurricanes of fire, to wring the hearts of their kin with unavailing grief, to send them into the wastes of their desolate lands, in rags and hunger, broken in spirit, worn with travail, and begging for the refuge of the grave. We ask it in the spirit of wrath, O Master of mankind. Black Templars vow. Abhor the witch, destroy the witch. Lead us from death to victory, from falsehood to truth. Lead us from despair to hope, from faith to slaughter. Lead us to his strength and an eternity of war. Let his wrath fill our hearts, death, war, and blood. In vengeance, serve the Emperor and the name of Dawn. Suffer not the unclean to live. Prayer and vow of the Black Templars. Trust in the Emperor at the hour of battle. Trust him to intercede and protect his warriors true as they deal death on alien soil. Turn their seas to red with the blood of their slain. Crush their hopes, their dreams, and turn their songs into cries of lamentation. Uphold the honor of the Emperor. Vow of the Black Templars. O Emperor, in wrath rejoicing at bloody wars, fierce and untamed, whose mighty power doth make the strongest walls from their foundations shake. O conquering master of mankind, be pleased with this war's tumultuous roar. Delight in swords and fists red with alien blood and the dire ruins of savage battle. Rejoice in furious challenge and avenging strife, whose works with woe embitter human life. Accept any challenge, no matter the odds. Prayer and vow of the Black Templars. With these vows in place, the Templars are very unlike any of their brothers and cousins in other...
Holy shit, there was a lot of vows. So every single, I don't know if that was one big vow or if these were like separate little vows, and that each one is their own thing, and that they had to say them, or at least pledge in a way that they're gonna follow them. But the thing I thought was pretty cool was that they got like a chain. I'm pretty sure that's symbolic of something, but I'm not sure why. But damn, bro, Sigus, you a whole nother type of Space Marine.
The chapters of Space Marines. They do use heavy weapons and ordnance, as they are not idiots, but the use of devastation squads is far more limited. They are in fact a rarity due to the vows, due to the second vow. But sometimes even the Templars need to use heavy weapons to clear away particular foes. As stated, they are fanatics, but they are not idiots.
Alright, let's go ahead and talk about it for a minute. Now, that last little part right there, and I made sure to stop it before we got into the actual recruitment process, which kind of is what they would go into, so I'm going to cut that little part out and then save it for the next part 2, so that way I can start on a subject when I come back to this video. But when they said that they're more along the lines of like take the fight to the enemy, and they do it more in a up close personal manner, like kind of like I mean not like orcs in the way they do things, but like very close melee combat. And obviously they do use bolters and all that, and that was another thing I like, is that they're fanatical and they're very zealous. Hope I'm using the word right, but they're very smart. Like, they're not stupid in the way they think, right? Like, I don't know, man. Just something, the way he explains it, Baldermort, or just the way, which, by the way, he's almost at 100,000 subscribers. So if you're not subscribed to him, which I'm assuming that at least the majority of you are, if you're not subscribed to him, you should really check him out. Just something with their backstory and their lore, specifically Sigus, right? And shout out to Grimaldi, that just the person he was written as. I mean, like, it's hard. It's genuinely hard to put into words, and just the amount of like, when I hear what he's saying about them, and you see all these illustrations and these pictures on them, and it kind of just makes you like, just want to stare, like, not in a weird way, but just stare at them and just contemplate, like, how is it that a person like this can be the way they are? Like, imagine if someone had a Black Templars type mentality in anything in today's world. Like, somebody had it in terms of being an athlete, even if they had like some kind of something that would make it hard for them to become one. For example, say if you had coordination issues, right? But you wanted to be an MMA fighter, and you just had that type of mentality to eventually, like, you didn't have any special talent, nothing like that. Literally, also with the way the Black Templars team is, like, they're literally hard work on the extreme, like with steroid type mentality, man. And that's what really drives it to me, as far as just, I mean, connecting to me, just because, I mean, if you ever met a Marine, especially when they're in, not so much when they're out, but I mean, also when they're out, but mainly when they're in, the sheer amount of confidence and just the way they see the Marine Corps. I mean, not the chain of command really, but more just what the Marine Corps is supposed to represent, and their boys that when they're there. It's insane. Like, it literally is somewhat similar. I mean, obviously, you know, the differences between the Black Templars and Marines in today's world. But now, for example, take Mad Dog Maddish. I mean, literally just type his name on Google, find out about him, and you see the way the Marines, I mean, obviously there were memes that Marines were making, and they were like literally praising him as kind of a god, and they would do these little memes like they're trying to summon him, and just the fanatical aspects of not only, say, with Marines. I mean, take for example, I've seen a documentary before in the past about Spitnaz, and like really, for example, with them as well, the only ones that are going to stay in, and that's kind of where I always heard the term, was that the only ones that are going to be staying in are those that are fanatical about that type of mentality or that type of life. And this just reminds me so much of the Black Templar. And I know they really take a lot of inspiration from like real world type groups, but these guys are definitely now in the top as far as not only genuinely interesting, but just something about them. makes you, and he even said that they're one of the most popular ones with everyone who's into Warhammer 40k, or at least according to him. And I can definitely see why. The way they're written, the way they always seem portrayed. I would like to get to know more about Sigismund, just to kind of see what he was like. I mean, obviously, this didn't go too much into his background. They went into a little bit, like he was one of the few Marines that survived the Imperial Fist massacre because of Roldor and sending them into that birdcage trap. But we've been talking for about 5 minutes now, way past that 1 minute, so I'm going to go ahead, end the video here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, it really does help me out a lot. Hit that dislike button if you didn't like it, it helps me improve the channel. If you're curious to see what's coming up next, check the description down below. You're going to see a list of about 5 videos. Top to bottom, it's going to be how I view them. But until then, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.